Hey, what's going on? It's your boy Dalton from the Petrol List, and there was so much good and so much bad about the Azerbaijanian Baku Grand Prix. You know what I want to do? I want to start with the good, because for the first time ever, I think, in the history of this channel, I have created a category of biggest losers. And I have just a couple of people or entities or whatever in mind. But you know what? I'm going to save the negativity for the end of the video. And we're going to just get started right into the race review. So lap one, great start for Oscar Piastri and Charles Leclerc. Norris did not really capitalize on his lap one, turn one. That's just kind of become a really famous meme for him. And Piastri did it. So Perez, he took third away from Sainz. Sainz ended up in fourth place after lap one. And Lewis Hamilton, instead of starting seventh on the grid, started in the pit lane after Mercedes decided that, you know what, just before the race, it's a really good time for a power unit change. They never really answered that, but let's move on from there. We'll tackle that a little bit later. Also, lap one, major contact between Stroll and Tsunoda, and that made Stroll pit early, you know, just in lap two. So his race was pretty much done, but then again, it's Lance Stroll. I'm not really sure if his races ever really, truly get started. That's not shade. That's just reality. Lap three, Norris is back into the points after I can't remember if it was a poor start. I'm assuming it was, but who knows. Lap 15, though, Norris is in P5, but here's the interesting thing. Lap 15, Norris defends against Perez on behalf of Oscar Piastri, who is still fighting for P1. So the thing is, Piastri was getting ready to go into the pits. The team asked Norris if he could fight off Perez for a couple of laps to make sure that when Oscar Piastri left the pit lane, he would maintain track position in front of Sergio Perez. And the defending that Norris did actually did help that situation. So it's interesting, is Norris kind of turning into the second driver for McLaren, you know, just de facto. It took him 5 years to win 2 races, and it took Oscar Piastri 18 months to win 2 races. Now, I know that one of them, Norris had to give up the spot, but again, if Norris hadn't given up the spot, Piastri would have a win deficit to Lando Norris, and some of it comes down to mentality. And, you know, here's one more thing that I kind of wanted to say about the Lando Norris v. Oscar Piastri thing. You can go and look back at my videos from before. I have always said that Oscar Piastri, at least on the McLaren team, was kind of the one to watch. Now, in a couple of races in this season, I think even Peter Windsor, some other people, they questioned how good of a racer Oscar Piastri was. Not necessarily how good of a driver. Everybody knew that Oscar Piastri had the driving skills. He would get up the race pace and he would maintain. But they had the question, what about racing? How good is he at racing? And by racing, I'm assuming that they meant, you know, when the rubber hits the road, can he pass? Can he make the decisions that is going to make him win, or at least podium? It was hard to see because I think during the first half of the season, Piastri was maintaining that second driver role, but after Lando Norris kept having the bad lap one, turn one, there was one instance where Piastri got stuck in fourth place, and I think it was after that Piastri said, you know, F it, I am not doing that anymore. I'm not getting stuck behind Lando Norris, and if I have an opportunity to pass, then I'm going to go ahead and do that. And that was kind of that controversial move. I want to say it was in Monaco, maybe Monaco, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, that Piastri made on Lando Norris. And he did it without remorse. And he made another phenomenal move, which we'll talk about in a few laps, on Charles Leclerc. And I think that solidified the fact that Piastri isn't just a good driver. He is an excellent racer. All right, let's get a little further into it. Lap 19, Piastri coming out of his shell as a racer, as a racing driver, kind of that's what I was talking about. Brilliant pass on Charles Leclerc, and it was a late break against a driver who is well known for his ability to late break in Charles Leclerc. He's no slouch, and I think we just got proven to by Oscar Piastri that he's no slouch either. All right, lap 19, Verstappen is still stuck in P7 behind George Russell, and Hamilton clawing. The car was clawing his way back up the grid, and he was in P15. Lap 25, Norris defending heavily against Max Verstappen, and the RB20 of Verstappen still struggling to turn in. So remember the T-brake scenario. I talked about that before. That T-brake scenario favored Max Verstappen a lot more than it favored Sergio Perez. And I would go so far as to say that without the T-brake for Max Verstappen, his tendency to turn into braking versus Sergio Perez's tendency to stop straight during braking, brake in a straight line, I think that accounts for the advantage that it might be looking like Sergio Perez has. The car is simply no longer set up for Max Verstappen. Do I think Max Verstappen needs to have training wheels in order to win races? No, absolutely not. But I do think that his car is now out of whack, and they've got to do testing on his car. They don't have to do testing on Sergio Perez's car. They've got to do testing on his car. So some races he's going to have a good race, some races he's going to have a bad race, but they've got to test on his car because they've got to reset up the car for him. And that's my theory on why he's having such a hard time. All right. Lap 20. Oh, no. Let's go back. Oh, yeah. Lap 28. Now, this is a prime example of the move that Leclerc was trying to do over and over again on Oscar Piastri. He did it lap 28. I think he did it lap 33 several more times throughout the race, and it just would not stick. You could see after he made the move, there was just some otherworldly acceleration in the McLaren car. And if you've been watching the news over the last, day or so since the race, it looked like McLaren had this mini DRS thing going on that reduced drag. I'll see if I can find the clip, but part of the rear wing would just kind of like smooth out and there'd be a gap, and that greatly reduces drag. But the thing about motorsports, the thing about Formula One, there are always, engineers and whatnot that are they read the rules once. I heard this quote somewhere, I can't remember exactly where. They read the regulations once to find out what the regulations say, and then they read them again to find out what the regulations don't say. And that is the wiggle room that they work with. Now, the T-brake scandal, huge controversy. The mini DRS, huge controversy. The front wing flexibility on the McLaren cars and the Mercedes cars, medium controversy, but they all have one thing in common, and that is all teams are going to try to find an advantage. And I guess at the end of the day, if you don't get caught, then that's it. You win the races that you win, and when you get caught, you got to stop doing it, and then you got to recover from that, however long that takes. Let's see, moving on to lap 42. This one clip, it's not very important, but it's a beautiful, beautiful clip, and it just illustrates how hard Piastri and Leclerc were driving these cars. I mean, on the edge of performance. Can you imagine taking a corner at, 100, 150? I don't know how fast they were going, but this is a tandem drift in Formula One cars. These are two very excellent drivers, I must say. Absolutely to the ragged edge, to the limit, these two drivers. Beautiful racing. Lap 49, Lando Norris with the pass on Verstappen. While it was a great move, it really only took away 2 points from the Drivers' Championship lead of Verstappen. I think it might be too little too late this season for McLaren, especially given the decisions that they had made. Do I think that Lando Norris is the championship kind of driver? I don't think so, and I think that 2024 is his season to be a world drivers champion, and I think between Hungary and a couple of other incidents, I'm just not sure he's going to have that much of an opportunity moving forward. And I think that it was, a huge waste, a huge tragedy for him. And given enough time, I think Oscar Piastri is going to be the official #1 driver at McLaren, not just the de facto. All right, lap 50. This is the big one. Perez and Sainz crash. Both Perez, I got to give it to them. Perez and Sainz were both having a beautiful race. Perez was sticking in there in the RB20. Sainz was gaining on the podium, and Sainz had a beautiful pass. That's all I can say. Beautiful pass. And the collision, I'm personally going to call it a racing incident because, they were both kind of at fault. But philosophically, I've got to say, you have to take a look at what happened leading up to the crash. So did Sainz veer a little bit to the left and impact Sergio Perez? Yes, absolutely. It happened just a smidgen. But I got to say, look at the amount of track. Look at the amount of track that Sergio Perez had to his left. He had absolutely no reason to be that close to Carlos Sainz on a straightaway. What he was doing, and I've seen him do it before, was he was trying to pressure Sainz over by that wall and try to force him to make a mistake. Perez has done it before, and it's almost never ended well for him. Why he keeps doing this, I'm not sure. But it ended in yet another crash, and I'm going to get into the biggest losers of the day part because this part kind of gets me heated. So the biggest losers of the day. #1, I'm going to say Sergio Perez. Not necessarily for what happened before the crash. I think it was a terrible move on his part to take up so much space. Yeah, did Sainz turn in? We already covered that. It's a tactic he's used before. It's not working. Stop it. Now, the thing that incensed me even more than that is when he walked up to Carlos Sainz's car and smacked him or pushed him on the helmet or whatever. Now, we know that they've got the head and neck restraints and they've got all this kind of stuff to keep the neck stabilized, but you got to account for the fact that there could have been a head or neck injury, and that kind of shove immediately following a crash, not knowing what kind of condition the other driver is in, that is despicable, and that should be against the rules. That should get you a fine. That should get you some kind of grid place penalty. That's terrible. That is absolutely terrible. So Sergio Perez, definitely one of the big losers of the day. I'm going to call Mercedes leadership another big loser of the day. Why? Because somehow it keeps happening. Free practice, Hamilton is doing great. And then on qualifying, he's always a second or half a second down. What is that Mercedes? And then the other thing is, okay, so you already slowed down his qualifying, and then you give him a random power unit change, kind of like that random overheating thing where he had to retire the car. Like, I don't know what's going on with Mercedes, but you know that their motto, the best or nothing. It feels like when it comes to Lewis Hamilton, it's Mercedes F1, the worst or nothing. I don't get it. And then they couldn't get his tire temperatures right, starting him off on cold tires. What happened to driver safety? FIA? Shouldn't that be illegal? Shouldn't it be illegal to sabotage your own drivers? I mean, you're looking after planks. You're looking at, underweight cars with George Russell. You're looking at, T-valves. You're looking at all these things. But when Mercedes is systematically sabotaging the performance of one of their drivers, which can put their driver in danger. Why is that not illegal? So Mercedes, especially Toto Wolff, because he said after the fact that they were running experiments on Lewis Hamilton's car, I kind of call BS on that. Yeah, does that happen? But not to this extent. You don't completely throw away races for your driver. Now, I know it's become a meme that it doesn't matter where Lewis Hamilton starts and where George Russell starts. Lewis Hamilton will always equal George Russell or surpass him. I think they didn't want to suffer that meme again. But guess what? They incensed their own fans. I went to the Mercedes Formula One Instagram page and they tried to put, oh, George Russell P3, and guess what? He podiumed because Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez crashed. Let's get that straight. He was racing by himself. If you saw him in the cool down room, it looked like, have you ever been invited to a party and you don't know anyone? And the person who invited you, I don't know, is late or didn't show up, and you're just kind of sitting there like, hey, how's it going? That's how awkward it looked, because I think he knew he didn't belong there. And Piastri and Leclerc, there's nothing to talk about. They're talking about, the great turns and all that kind of stuff. They're talking about the crash between Sainz and Perez. What did George Russell do besides drive by himself the entire race? Now, P3, was it rated? Yeah, of course. That's just racing driving. But, I gotta say, it's kind of awkward. And that awkward situation probably would not have happened if Lewis Hamilton had been invited to the party. So the FIA, biggest loser, Mercedes leadership, including Toto Wolff, who said with his whole chest, he was very proud of it, we did experiments on Lewis Hamilton's car. Biggest loser of the day. Now, let's redeem this really quick, because I gotta say, the rookies' reactions to sharing the track with Lewis Hamilton, to having a great day, to getting points on some of their maiden races, their attitudes are great. Their attitudes, the rookies actually were a shining example of how to be a gentleman in motorsport. I think Toto Wolff could learn from that. I think Sergio Perez could learn from that. I think even Norris could learn from that, because after all, he did say F this championship. If you're saying F this championship, maybe it's time for you to exit or just become very happy with being a number 2 driver and support Oscar Piastri in all of his championship winning endeavors. All right, that's it. That was almost 20 minutes, but these races are getting super interesting. 2025 is going to be a banger. We still have some 2024 left. And with that, I will see you after next race. I have been Dalton. This has been Petrolist, and you have been great. I'm out.